The blacksmith. God is the creator, and Blake, uh, like loss, his alter ego. It is art that brings creation to his fulfillment by showing the world as it is, by sharpening perception, by giving form to ideas. For Blake and for many Christians, the purpose of creation is as a place for our own growth. Although the natural world contains much that is gentle and innocent, those who are experienced with they know that there is also much that is terrible and frightening. The fearful symmetry may represent both the lamb and the tiger, innocence and experience. The poem Tiger finishes without an answer. It is about our own experience on not getting completely satisfactory answer to the essential question of faith. The poem Tiger has 6 quatrains of rhyming couplets with mostly trochaic rhythm. I is rhymed with symmetry. It has one stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. It has a b b pattern. Trochee means it has an accent on the first syllable. For example, here are 2 words. One is virtue and further. This is how we stress on the beginning part of the spelling. So we find the trochaic rhythm here. Uh, there are other poems. Jerusalem, for example, a very long poem. Dr. Pathak has elaborated the age itself, and it was the age of industry. And we have in the Tiger poem, we went through anvil and hammer and all those words. Furnace, for example, which was very important. They are the symbols of the raw material being churned and made into liquid and then molded once again. In Jerusalem, once again, he talks about the past glory of the country. He was aware of dark satanic mills. I have the poem, but due to time constraint, we shall not go through it. But the satanic mills appears here in the poem Jerusalem in his Milton collection. But in his own way, he overcame it. Satanic mills, dark satanic mills, the reference to dark satanic mills does represent the industrial revolution in that age. It was he was a liberator of his own and others who read him. I believe that he liberated himself by writing these poems, and we also liberated ourselves, those who read his poem. The Silk Rose, for example, is a small. There is a painting behind it of Silk Rose. He has written this and drawn himself. Silk Rose is a small, beautiful poem. It has enormous range. It expresses single idea or feeling. It provides a thought, an aspect of love. It is a complex emotional and intellectual vibration. A lyric is meant to be sung, but such poems may be or may not be composed. Songs of Innocence, the most lyrical poems are collected in this part. The most emphatic symbol of child is referred here. Piping down the valleys wild represents the most cheerful mood. Piper, pipe that song again. So I piped. He wept to hear. And in the same poem, the listener is commanded to write in a book that all may read. And I made a rural pen, and I stained the water clear. And I wrote my happy songs, every child may joy to hear. Here in such poems we find the purity of emotions. Poison Tree, once again, and Lover's Secret represent yet another mood. It is the power of worldly wisdom. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath. My wrath did end. I was angry with my foe, and I told it not. My wrath did grow. Even these lines, quatrains, have independent meaning. We can separate like to see a world in a grain of sand. Night is a comparatively longer poem where we find the symbols of fierceness. There are symbols of stars, and stars represent cold reason. The wolves and tigers and lions. The poem ends on a hopeful note on guarding the weak and poor, that is, the bleating lamb. Here in the center we find the house where William Blake lived after he was jailed and after the case of sediment on him. William Blake used to walk in his friend's garden naked, like in Paradise Lost we have Adam and Eve. So he remarked to the soldier that you should be killed by Napoleon, and this was the case of sediment on him. And this is the place in the center, the house where he lived in Filfarm. Several the pictures, engravings, and the art form is here. I am unable to comment on this, but you can see the movement of the picture. And the last one presents William Blake's tomb and some more pictures. There is Newton under the tomb. Newton is working on it. So William Blake has come out on his own as an original thinker, making use of symbols and mythology. William Wordsworth said that this poor man was really mad, but he stands separately among all the poets. So I think Dr. Pathak may be able to comment on several paintings. This can't go forward, I think. Oh yes, this one is here.
Here we see paintings very much here, and at the outset I had already mentioned that his approach was literally a commingling of poetry and painting. In fact, a poet himself is a painter. Painter uses paints to express or give expressions to emotions, thoughts and feelings, and a poet uses myths, symbols, images, similes to do the same thing here. In fact, here we find the presence of sand. The use of sand is symptomatic of industrial period and science as well. Newton, when there is an essay where he has already referred to sitting on the rock and sitting a painting,
yes,
and looking at the pebbles of the shore. Here he also mentions sand. So sand simplifies or symbolizes a concrete state, and from sand, from concrete to go to the abstract, which is very much familiar with William Blake's approach. Literally, what does he do? He tries to pierce the visible world to go into the spiritual world, where he tries to cull how the events are taking place. In one of his letters to his friend Thomas Burt, he admits that allegory addresses to intellectual powers, and altogether it is hidden from the corporeal understanding. I would like to mention here why he uses allegory here. He says that allegory is a system of symbols which tries to present the events in the spiritual world, which is not possible for the corporeal understanding. When I say corporeal understanding, means those people who believed in materialism, corporeal world, mundane world, and they were not in a position to see through the material and the spiritual aspect. They were limited to the physical perception only. They had nothing. That's why I keep on telling that this particular period revolted against the hedonistic approach of materialism, hedonistic approach of classicism, where the world was gay when Belinda smiled. Here, this particular poet is primarily dealing with whom? The common people suffering, the emotions, the childhood experience, the awe, the surprise which a child witnesses while looking at the world. So we can say we have a complete world view here. In the context of tiger, I'd like to mention that tiger stands for cosmic forces. He was a believer in active free life of imagination. That's why his emphasis on imagination is always there for all to see. He considers imagination as equivalent to God. And what exactly is this imagination? He discriminates that imagination which distinguishes a human being from animal. A very important point here. In order to recapitulate and present in a modern context, we can put it in a psychological perspective also. We say that whatever he talks about cosmic forces, creative forces, collective forces, they are akin to Carl Jung's collective unconscious. Carl Jung himself has admitted in his one of the most important work, Analytical Poetry. Here he has tried to analyze the creative forces which remain hidden, immanent in collective unconscious of people, and a poet or writer is just as a medium through which that symbol, that archetype, that myth completes its own cycle. Means God forges himself outside through the imagination of a poet or a writer. That's why poet William Blake particular at one point of time has admitted that God always peeps through his window so that I can record my experiences transformed into imagination and eventually presented in the form of a literary work of art. Mr. Pandya.
To conclude, I would quote the last on imagination. This last quote: "The artist makes the eternal world. It is the product of his imagination. The vegetable tree would be dead, but symbolically, a tree can be remain alive in imagination, because for Blake, imagination was divine." Thank you very much, Dr. Pathak, and thank you, Sandhan.
Thank you.
Thank you, friends.
Thank you.
Sandhan, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.